Why, after a spiritual awakening, do so many people suddenly feel empty, drained of motivation, as if life itself had collapsed? But stay until the end of this video, because in the final moments, you will discover how this very collapse can become a doorway into deeper meaning and a more enduring source of vitality. When someone first awakens spiritually, they often believe that life will remain forever illuminated. But after weeks or months, they are struck by a painful truth. The old fire is gone. The career that once ignited passion feels lifeless. The pursuit of money and recognition empty. Suddenly everything seems meaningless. Many fear they are falling into depression. Yet, through Jung's lens, this is not an illness. It is an inevitable stage after awakening. For much of their drive had never been their own. It was borrowed from family expectations, social pressure, the ego's hunger for achievement. When those illusions collapse, a vast emptiness is revealed. This is what Jung called confronting the shadow. You feel hollow because the false energies that once fueled you have dissolved. Modern society only deepens the struggle, demanding constant productivity, success, and ambition. So when someone no longer desires these things, they feel broken, left behind. But in truth, this loss of motivation is a spiritual summons to stop, to turn inward, to discover a source of power and value within. It is not an ending. It is the beginning of a new energy, one rooted in the soul's authenticity. Why does motivation vanish after awakening? Because the forces that once propelled you, career, money, praise, suddenly fall away, like masks stripped from the face. You realize you have been running in a race you never chose, living a life scripted by others. And when all this collapses, an abyss opens. You do not know where to go or what to do. That emptiness terrifies. You feel useless, adrift, unmotivated. Some force themselves back into the old patterns, working harder, chasing goals. But the more they try, the more exhausted they become. For the soul will no longer tolerate what is false. This, not wanting to do anything, is not laziness. It is the sign that an old chapter has ended. It is the soul's way of calling you to live more truthfully, to pause, to listen, to allow a deeper purpose to emerge. Out of this silence, a new, authentic energy will slowly take form. Picture it. A man in his 50s sits blankly before a computer, his 30-year career gone overnight. His savings vanished with the market's collapse. Beside him, his wife quietly folds medical bills, wondering if they can afford her husband's Alzheimer's care. Elsewhere, a mother returns from a night shift to find her grown child still lying in bed, paralyzed by depression. These are not distant tragedies. They are the shadows of our age. For years, we cover them with busyness, shopping, fleeting pleasures. But after awakening, when the mask falls, the wounds can no longer be hidden. Motivation collapses not because of weakness, but because the soul refuses to be driven by fear and the machinery of the old life. And in that collapse lies a harsh but liberating truth. To find real motivation again, we cannot go back. We must walk through the darkness with courage until we emerge into a deeper and more authentic light. When the cracks begin to open, many find themselves lost in confusion, waking each morning with no reason to rise from bed. They once believed that motivation came from a steady job, a stable family, or the praise of others. But when these pillars begin to shake, when work is lost, relationships fracture, health declines, life collapses like a house built on sand. This, Jung tells us, is the withdrawal of false energy. The moment when the forces that once sustained the ego lose their power. And one must face the terrifying question, if I am no longer defined by these things, who am I? In recent years, millions have struggled with burnout, anxiety, and depression. Loneliness grows in a world more connected to screens, yet further from true human contact. The loss of motivation is not weakness. It is the soul's refusal to continue marching to an alien rhythm. It is a call to return home, to seek a life force that does not come from paychecks or applause, but from a deeper bond with what nourishes the heart. And this is the first step toward rebirth, realizing that emptiness is not the enemy, but the doorway to another kind of energy, one more profound, more enduring. The moment a person touches this emptiness often feels like falling into an abyss. Familiar anchors vanish and everything seems meaningless. The man who poured his whole identity into work now finds himself hollow, for titles no longer define him. The woman who built her entire life around caring for family feels lost when her children leave home, unsure who she is without them. The young adult who chased degrees or online recognition suddenly sees it all as nothing more than a thin coat of paint. In these moments, motivation disappears because the false sources that once fueled life have run dry. Jung wrote that when the unconscious rises, it shatters the illusions that once fed the ego. This collapse is not wasted. It is like the harsh winter before the spring. One must endure the cold emptiness so that a new motivation, free from fear, free from others' expectations, can begin to grow. This is difficult because society never teaches us to wait in silence. It tells us always to keep going, do more, prove more. Yet it is precisely in stopping, in waiting, that real energy begins to be reborn from within. When life forces a person to stop, inner silence opens like a hidden door. Old wounds long buried begin to speak. A middle-aged man may finally feel the anger he suppressed throughout years of marriage. A woman may touch the depth of her loneliness after realizing she lived her whole life trying to please others. A young man once addicted to social media may face the fear of being forgotten when the spotlight fades. This is the shadow Jung described, the broken fragments of the soul that have never been faced. In the modern world, we are told to be strong, to move forward, to never show weakness. But the truth is, it is precisely in weakness, in tears, in fear, that untapped energy lies hidden. When a person dares to admit, "I am tired, I no longer wish to keep running," it is then that a new truth begins to sprout. Motivation no longer feels like a whip driving from behind. It becomes a seed quietly pushing a tender shoot through the soil. And from this dark ground, a new life begins to emerge. This is the turning point. When a person chooses to sit with their pain rather than run from it, a slow transformation begins. The man once tormented by unemployment gradually learns that his worth is not confined to a job title. The exhausted caregiver begins to discover that she, too, has the right to be cared for and loved. The young adult, once dazzled by glittering illusions, realizes that true value is not found in likes, but in the quiet peace of doing what feels aligned with the heart. This is not a loud change. It is a small, steady flame, quietly replacing despair. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of returning to oneself, rather than becoming the version that society expects. It is like peeling away layer after layer of clothing worn for years until one finally touches the inner essence. And when this occurs, motivation is no longer a pressure, but a natural pull. One begins to live, to give, not to prove, but because meaning has been found. The initial awakening, though it may strip us of all motivation, is in truth the doorway to a new kind of energy, one tied to truth and freedom. When this truth is accepted, something miraculous happens. The heavy emptiness turns into a spacious openness, a fertile ground where new meaning can be planted. The man once bound by financial fear begins to cherish authentic relationships more than the balance in his account. The weary caregiver finds strength in discovering a community that shares her burdens, realizing she is not alone. The young adult, once chasing the spotlight, finds comfort in creating, learning, and serving others. These are living proofs that out of collapse, a new energy can be born. Jung often emphasized, true motivation does not arise from the ego shaped by society, but from the soul reconciled with its own shadow. When a person dares to face their pain, life energy returns stronger, purer. It is no longer the pressure to become someone, but a simple, sacred longing to live authentically and in doing so, to radiate light for others. So if you find yourself unmotivated after awakening, do not mistake it for an ending. See it as an invitation into the deepest stage of the journey, to discover strength and truth, and to be reborn into a life filled with meaning. Sometimes, losing motivation is not a collapse. It is the soul's whisper that you are being called toward a truer path. When one learns to enter that emptiness, they uncover a new energy, not driven by fear or illusion, but guided by inner truth and freedom. This is the real gift of awakening, a motivation that is not loud, but enduring, steady, and sincere. And if these words resonate with your own journey, I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to this channel, where each story and Jungian reflection is shared not only to illuminate the darkness, but also to remind you that you are never alone in the search for meaning. Stay, and together we will walk further into the depths of the soul.